I probably shouldn't have had you seat, but we'll do it today anyway. Our opening prayers by Jim Steele. Joseph.
Blessed since we meet together, let singing and praise the reading of the word, sharing our fellowship, the prayers that will be heard. Bless us as we meet together with the Lord, as we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Well, good morning. It's good to see all of you here today. I suppose the agape class is meeting in the garden room. We missed them too, but we'll carry on. Let's see, we do welcome the guests if we have any, and any visitors, and certainly the men of the young men's Bible class. We'll have a health and welfare report if anybody knows someone who's sick, needs our prayers, who's not with us today. That's good. Okay, are there any announcements other than the ones that I'm going to make? It was suggested that if you folks want to move in closer to Karen, so that when she does her demonstration, you can see more, but that's up to you. Bob Lovejoy has an announcement about, or a commentary concerning our baseball night.
Baseball get-together has been rescheduled for Wednesday, August 30th. The Greensboro Grasshoppers play the Hickory Crawdads at 6:30 p.m. The tickets that you received for the previous game are no longer any good. Please throw them away. There are sign-up sheets, 2 at the back table. I'll have one up here after Karen finishes this morning. And so you have to sign up again. I have one regret to share with you. The Thursday night game was preferred in my book because it's Thursdays have price beers at the game. This is Wednesday, so y'all have to pay full price for alcoholic beverages that are consumed. We will be sending emails out later on this month. You can sign up either electronically or again with the sign up sheet. They'll do both. And we look forward to seeing you. Anybody have any questions? Very good.
Thank you, Bob. It seems like the Pope was making an extended visit to the United States. And he decided the best way he could get acquainted with people was to travel from California to New York. So he proceeded to do just that. And somewhere in the Midwest, the Pope mobile broke down. So he had to continue his journey in a rental limousine. So they were driving on toward New York, and the driver pulled down the glass partition and said, "I know I'm not supposed to speak to you. I'm not even sure what to call you, Your Highness, Father, whatever." And the Pope said, "Well, don't worry about that. Just call me anything you like." And he said, the driver then said, "Well, I want to do anything I can for you to make your journey more enjoyable." And the Pope says, "Well," says, "you know, since I was elected Pope, nobody has let me drive before. And I would like to drive a while and see if I can still do it. I haven't done it in a long time." And so he did. They switched places. And the Pope was driving along and got very comfortable, relaxed, And he said, he just felt good about that. And he didn't know that he was letting his speed slip on up, because the time he had driven, the cars didn't do that quite as much. So he got faster and faster, and finally, a patrol officer stopped him and looked in the car, and then said, "Wait just a moment here," and he went back to call his chief. And then he said, "Chief, I've got a problem here." Said, "I've got a man that I've stopped, and it looks like I've made a mistake." And the chief says, "You mean you stopped a representative again?" And he said, "This is much more important than a representative." He said, "Is it the governor? Did you stop the governor?" And he said, no, it's not the governor. It's much more important than the governor." And he said, "Don't tell me you stopped the presidential line of cars." And he said, "No, it's more important than that." He said, "Well, just who is it?" And he said, "Hell, I don't know." But he says, I don't know who's in the back seat, but the Pope is driving. Okay. Karen, our congressional nurse and director of the Sadie Bowles Fund, is going to take the program over here and tell you her last name.
Can you all hear me if I talk without a mic? Is that okay? So my last name is Amirehsani. I know it's a handful, but don't worry about it. I grew up, like my daughter's friends would call me Mrs. A. When I taught at UNCG, because I had my PhD, they would just say Dr. A. Just call me Karen, you guys, okay? But my goal today is to kind of talk about if there was an emergency here. How would we handle a medical emergency? What are the roles? And then what equipment do we have at church and where is it located? Okay, so you've got two handouts, and the first one really kind of just talks about managing an emergency. So if you were in Sunday school here, you were in church service at the Life Center or wherever you are in the building, garden room or the sanctuary, if you recognize that somebody is slumped over, okay, or fainted, or someone's telling you, "I'm having chest pain, I feel sick," something's going on. What we want to do is one, recognize it. So somebody that would recognize it, and I don't know if you're aware, all of the ushers have been going through training. So for any of the services in the church or in the Life Center, our ushers actually have zones that they're kind of looking at. So they're kind of during a service being aware, because sometimes someone is slumped over and the person immediately around them isn't quite aware. So we do have ushers that are thinking in a different way and looking at that. So if we had an emergency and something happened here, one, we need someone's gonna go check on that person. And, the first thing if someone is unresponsive is to shake them. Did they fall asleep? I mean, that happens, shake them. Hey, are you okay? If you know them by name, calling them out by name, see if they respond. If you found that someone is not responsive, there truly is an emergency. If someone tells you, "I'm having chest pain," and they feel bad, we're going to call 911. So the key thing, though, is not everyone to call 911. We're trying to have like one person call 911. And if you're the person with the phone, fortunately today with cell phones, I have responded to emergencies since I've been here at church. During the week, we've called 911 multiple times. We just had a call actually this last week again for someone. I take my phone with me. I call. I can speak with the operator at the same moment, and I'm looking at a person. So the key is not to have someone in a different place call 911, because the operator is going to ask you questions. They're going to want to know, is this a medical emergency? Because remember, 911 could be a crime, right? It could be a burglary. So first, you're gonna say, we have a medical emergency, and they're gonna start to ask you questions. They're gonna wanna know, is this person awake? Are they unresponsive? Are they breathing? Do you have an AED? And an AED is an automatic external defibrillator, and that's what we're gonna go over how to use them today. So they're gonna ask you those questions. I've also been asked, I've had one time someone was presenting with a heart, like a heart attack kind of picture. Having chest pain, breaking out into sweat, short of breath. And I've had the EMS, which is emergency medical services, ask me, do you have any aspirin? So we do have baby aspirin, but I would only give this because they directed me to, unless you're a licensed physician and want to do that on your own, because that it can be a protocol. But in this room, if you guys all look right behind you, you turn around on the wall there, you're gonna see a white cabinet. That white cabinet houses our AED. And there's a sign above it, and in that cabinet, there's also aspirin. Okay, that we could use. This is baby aspirin, only in case they ask if you could give it. So when we talk about roles, one, we gotta recognize something's going on.
How many other locations in the church have AED?
Okay.
I guess you were gonna go over that.
I am gonna mention it, and I have it in writing. So we have 5 AEDs. Okay, we have one here. We have one in the welcome center in the cabinet, behind in that station, okay? We also have one in the northex. So if you're in the main sanctuary where the northex is, there's 2 tables, right, on the side. You will see the AED sign on the wall that you see above there. It's not in the white cabinet, it's on the shelf. And there's a first aid kit right next beside it. And in that first aid kit is the aspirin, if you needed it. We have them also in the Smith building. I'll answer in a moment. We have in the Smith building. So it's in a white cabinet on the wall. So between the pastor's offices and the Virginia Gilmore room where the bathrooms are, it's on that wall on the side of the bathroom. Okay. We have this room. We have a welcome center. We have Northex. We have Smith building, and we have one in the Mullen Life Center. And it's also in a white cabinet on the wall with the AED sign above it. Okay. From some generous donations from some ushers and people in this class, I've been able to order another AED. So because the newer ones are simpler, and I'm going to show you how to use them. This is the newer one. We have this one in our building. We're going to have another one. And then we've got the older ones, and the newer ones, I'll show you why in a moment when I demonstrate how to use it. You had a question, Bob?
What aspirin are doing? Make sure everybody knows why aspirin is important and what it does and how much.
Well, so you would not, I'm not gonna say how much because I can't prescribe, so to speak. So you would only use aspirin because the EMS operator directed you, they're following a protocol and they directed you to give it. So the aspirin that we have is 81 milligrams. So those are the baby aspirin type, the low dose aspirin, but they may ask you to do it. We have found that if someone was having a heart attack, which is caused by a clogging in a blood platelet, you know what I mean, in the artery, it will help to possibly lower that mortality rate of that person. Okay. Does that help? So you recognize there's an emergency. You have someone called 911. The person with their phone should be close to that person. Ask for someone, do we have a medical provider in the house that may have experience doing this and can help? But you want to be, again, close to the person so you can give a report about what's going on. We are so lucky, you guys, because EMS is a couple minutes away from our location, which is when I had to call 911 here, they're here very, very quickly, which is really helpful. The other role, though, for people to do is if you recognize that person, they're slumped over and you take a look at them, do you see their chest rising? Is it moving? you are not breathing, your heart is going to stop, right? Your color is going to change. And, you know, we would help that person get on the floor because we don't want them just to crash down on the floor. So it's always easier to resuscitate someone on the floor. You cannot do it in a chair. So just kind of knowing that. Another role, so someone would begin to, you recognize that person needs to start chest compression. We're going to talk about that. Can someone go and get the AED and bring it over beside you? So if you needed to use it, and we only apply it, if they're talking to you, you're not going to turn it on. But you're going to have it next to you in case the circumstance changes. What have we all learned from sports in this last year watching football, right? Haven't we learned how important it is if we needed to do something, we could shock them as quickly as possible? It's really the shock is what's going to help revive someone's heart. What we learned from research statistics is that every 1 minute delay in delivering a shock decreases your chance of surviving by 10%. So every 1 minute a delay. So that's why if you go to the airports now, there's AEDs everywhere. There's AEDs on planes. There's AEDs in the movie theaters. There's AEDs in malls. Sean, my husband and I, we were in Europe in June. We were in England. And you know what, guys, I was walking on the street and they have AED stations every few blocks. I was really surprised because we don't see that in the United States. You know, so again, we know that that's really what's key to getting started. The other role is if I'm sorry,
What does that AED look like?
theirs or ours?
Ours.
I'll show them to you in just a second. Okay. The other role is you would ask someone to go out in the street to meet the paramedics. So in every AED cabinet, I have a clipboard. It's got emergency information so that you could jot down names or information. Like I'll do it. I got blood pressure cuff. I might be doing other things with somebody as a licensed person, but it has the physical addresses of our building. Because the last thing, we don't need EMS to respond to the Life Center if it's in Red Hook Hall. So in all of our things, with every AED is a clipboard with the addresses. So you can give them the physical address and ask someone to go meet them on the street. Okay, so that's kind of that, putting that together. But let me show you. So if we needed to use it, you guys feel free to stand up, come around. I am going to show you on a trainer. If you had to do chest compressions, this is our friend. I won't name him Bob. Okay, but you know, the reality is, I've given you a handout here for those of you who like more information from the American Heart Association of the steps that you can look at. They are no longer recommending like do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. That's no longer part of the protocol for lay people. So I don't want people to worry about that. The key is that we would start chest compression while somebody is getting the AED. So I'm going to demonstrate that. And that's why you'll see here, they call it hands only, the CPR, because they're not doing the mask and the breathing. We're wasting time. We just need to start chest compressions and go ahead and deliver a shock as soon as the AED is available. So feel free to ask questions and stop me. But if you're going to do chest compressions, if you look at a person, the sternum is from here down, okay? We're not going to want to do chest compressions in the belly. We don't want to do chest compressions right next to the neck. It's basically going to be in this mid-chest area. And you guys, it takes strength. And if you're on the ground, I can use my hips. If I'm just doing biceps, you're going to exhaust yourself. And you'll notice the young paramedic people, they do 2 minutes and they change out the person, you know, if they were doing it. So if I was doing it here, I'm up here, I'm on my tiptoes, that's not so easy. But I got to keep my arms straight. You do not want to do this. You don't have the strength. You've got to use your whole body. Okay. And that's why it's so much easier. If you're on the ground, and excuse me for a moment if you can't see, but if I'm on the ground and I'm kneeling, I can use the weight of my whole body here. And I can do this. And the count is 100 a minute. So it's ticking, boom, 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 to try to do enough, because you're trying to get enough flow going for the heart. Okay, questions on that so far? Any of you, you're welcome after this to try to start to figure it out. Yes, sir.
I think at Scouts, they told us 15 compressions and another breath, and then 15 more compressions.
So things have kind of changed. Because that's giving a breath, but they're no longer recommending for lay people, and we're not in a hospital setting where we've got ambu bags and different types of masks. They're recommending that you do 2 minutes of CPR unless you already got your AED here. Okay, if it takes longer than 2 minutes to get the AED, you're gonna just keep doing chest compressions until the AED arrives or EMS gets here.
You're not gonna get any breath at all.
We're not doing breath in a lay person. We don't have oxygen. We don't have a special mask. What we're finding is that we need to get the heart pumping and we need to get the shock delivered. So the focus is really on the shock.
Is it different if somebody in a different setting is drowning?
So in drowning, you got to pull them out of the water and you're going to start chest compressions and waiting for EMS or AED to get there as well.
Is mouth eliminated there too?
If people are trained to do it, that's a different story. What we have found is that trying to get the head and neck positioned the right way, people have wasted time. Do you know what I mean? And if I've got a child, children need resuscitation for different reasons. Children tend to need resuscitation because they have an airway problem. So that's drowning is an airway problem. You know what I mean? But it's the key is to get the heart going and shock them and get EMS on board. Okay. So let me show you our AED.
Hey, Karen,
Yeah,
where do you, is the best place to determine if there's a fault, or is being?
good question. So we recommend for adults, where's the best place to determine if there's a pulse? Because you're going to look at them, are they breathing? And then you need to assess for a pulse. So if every one of you puts your hands up here by your jawbone, slide your fingers down, okay, on the inside here. Okay, not on the outside of the muscle. Here's your, okay, another way is, you know where your voice box is? You start here and just move gently to the side. Okay. Take 2 fingers, don't use your thumb, just a couple fingers right here, and you'll feel it. The carotid arteries lie right next to your trachea, which is your airway right here. If you feel over here, you're over muscle, you're not over the right place. So if you come on in until you feel that airway, that trachea, that's your best place to feel it. If you cannot feel it there, you can try the radial pulse. The recommendations from the American Heart Association is do not wait more than 10 seconds to determine if you have a pulse. Okay, but if you've got people to help you, you know what I mean? We can work as a team. Do we see any breathing? Talk out loud. Look at their color. They're going to be clammy. Do you feel a pulse? I don't feel it. And you would go ahead and go on. Okay, so we're going to assume no pulse. Let me show you the equipment on all of our AEDs. This is the new one. It's lighter weight. This thing is probably 8 pounds, 10 pounds. This one is maybe 2 pounds. You know what I mean? All of them have a side bag to them. And what's in this side bag? Because if you've got somebody that's got clothes on, we cannot shock through clothes. So you'll notice in this bag, there's some gloves, and I've got other bags of gloves in all the cabinets. And we have scissors and we have a razor. There is an airway mask for those of you who may be competent in using a mask and trying to maintain an airway. And it's got a one-way valve on it, so you cannot get any secretions in your own mouth that are from that person, okay? But you're not going to waste time trying to get off a shirt, get off a t-shirt. What we're going to do is use scissors to cut shirts, okay? And there's scissors with all of our AEDs in a side packet. And people feel uncomfortable. They feel like they're being invasive. But remember, that person's heart has stopped and they're not breathing. That's the reality of the situation. For men who have very hairy chests, Light hair, no big deal. But if you have a man with a really hairy chest, there's a razor in here. We end up putting a pad, one pad here, and the right upper, one pad here. And the razor's purpose is to do a couple of quick wipes to get hair off, because we need that pad to stick to the skin. If it's only adhered to the hair and not to the skin, the energy's not gonna go through. Yes,
Quick question.
yeah.
Out of context, but if we know patients with not breathing, has the DNR, you choose not to give them resuscitation, are we subject to legal liability?
So let me talk about a do not resuscitate order for just a moment. And we may need to come back at another time, because I know you guys will need to break for church in a moment. Do not resuscitate orders in North Carolina. I'm going to talk first from EMS's point of view. A photocopy of a do not resuscitate order is not legal for EMS to follow. It has to be an original copy. Okay, so we are one of those states that does not allow a DNR bracelet to be legal for EMS, and we do not allow photocopies of a DNR, do not resuscitate order to be legal. So for EMS, when EMS arrives, if there is not an original, then they will begin resuscitation. Okay, and the family may intervene, which is a right. You have to have a conversation with them, and then EMS will work with them to figure that out. All right, so like, for example, there are physicians who will write people 2 official DNR orders. One to keep at home, they go on the refrigerator, and one for that person to carry with them. Okay, as far as the layperson, we do have the Good Samaritan law. But I will tell you, you may just choose not to be that person to handle that situation if you don't know. Does that make sense? So like liability wise, there is some protection for lay people in doing what they think is the right thing. If you know they do not have a DNR, you may just not involve yourself in the scenario. That might be the better thing to do. Does that make sense? Questions on do not resuscitate orders? Okay. So you're going to have to remove the clothes. Just open it up this way. You're going, if they're hairy, a couple of quick swipes here and a couple of quick swipes here with the razor, and then you're going to put on the pad. What I am going to do is show you with the trainer how it works, and then I'll show you the caveat with this. So when this one is a trainer, so when I open it, and all of them, when you open them, they start blah, 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 start talking at you pretty loud, okay? All of the AEDs are set up for adults first, because that's usually who they need to resuscitate, is an adult, not a child. Okay, so when I open this, and it's a trainer, so I can hit a pause button. I can't on that one. So when I open it up,
adult mode. Remove all clothing from patient's chest.
I'm gonna pause it for a second. It says adult mode. You'll notice in here, it's really simple. That you see this handle, we're gonna peel this handle back to get to the pads because they're sealed. There is a child picture here. If you needed to resuscitate a child, we don't want it to deliver a same amount of shock as you would into an adult. That's what changes that. All you hit this is hit this button and it toggles back and forth. Okay. The first thing all of them tell you is remove clothes from the chest. Then next.
Pull red handle to video pads. And pictures on pads.
So on this particular set of pads, what you'll notice is that there's one that's red, one in yellow. I'll be frank with you, it doesn't matter. They're the exact same, but people like color-coded directions. So the red one they have says go up here. The yellow one they have go down here. All right. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to start it again. And I'm going to then put the pads on. But I will tell you, it will never go to the next step unless you completed the step you're on. Okay, so it'll tell you, we'll see, I'm hoping that these pads, they may do it. I've done this training before, and the pad's like, put the pad on, put the pad on, put the pad on. It's like, okay. So I'm gonna take this, these just peel off. So here,
Apply pads to bare child mode.
oh, I don't want
Adult mode. Apply pads to bare skin exactly as shown in the pictures. Do not touch patient.
There are sensors in the pad. If you don't have the pad all the way down, it'll keep telling you, put on the pad, put on the pad, okay? If it senses now that both of these pads are on, then it's gonna go to say, do not touch the patient. You would not continue CPR. You would not be doing chest compression. It wants to analyze the rhythm. It is the machine that will determine if the shock is needed, not you. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that, because some people feel really responsible for that. So it's gonna tell you to it'll analyze the rhythm, and then if it finds a rhythm that can be shocked or should be shocked, it will tell you, shock, you need to shock the patient. And this machine will have the red button up here and it will start to flash. So let me show you.
Analyzing heart rhythm. Everyone clear. Press flashing button. Stop delivered. Provide chest compressions to the beat. The heel of one hand should be in center of chest. The other hand should be on top of first hand.
So what happens with all the machines is that once you've got these pads on, the other person who's doing the chest compressions needs to stand back. Everybody needs to hand off the patient. It's analyzing the rhythm. If it determines that there's nothing shockable, it will tell you not to. May ask you to check a pulse, do something else, okay? But if it needs a shock, everybody, you cannot touch. My biggest fear is that a lay person, a spouse is gonna wanna hold that person's hand, touch their leg or foot. We do not want to be touching, because what shock gets delivered to them is gonna get delivered to the person who's touching the patient as well. Yes, sir.
I may have missed something, but do they have to be on the skin?
Yes.
So, all the clothes need to be removed, right?
So what you would do if somebody is there, any of you gentlemen or ladies, we can, I hate to say it, you guys, we don't worry so much about buttoning and taking the time to unbutton. We're just gonna pull, if you got on a button down shirt, pull it across, you got an undershirt on, a woman has a blouse on, we're just gonna take it and we're gonna cut up. Okay, because we have to get to the skin. We cannot deliver anything through clothing. It will not work. So the key thing is knowing it will walk you through, it's analyzed the rhythm, it tells you a shock is needed. If whoever's gonna hit that button, our rule of thumb in the hospital was always, it's your job to make sure nobody's touching the patient before you press that button.
I'll only mention my thing. No, you can do compression with clothes on.
You can do chest compressions with clothes on. You just have to know your anatomy enough to realize where you're at on the sternum, because you do not want to be over the belly. You're doing nothing. You've got to get over that heart. Realize that every time you do a chest compression, you're not getting the same amount of blood being pumped out as the heart would do by itself. Okay. After every time, it'll tell you a shock was delivered. It's going to tell you to do chest compressions for 2 minutes. And it has a timer at that 100 beats per minute for you to try to do that. We're lucky. EMS would be here by this time. Okay. And they would come in and take over. And the reason why the 2 minutes is the heart, it gets stunned and it needs a moment to kind of get itself reset, to get started again. And they have found through research it is not harmful to continue the chest compressions. In fact, it's more beneficial. And then in that 2 minutes, after 2 more minutes, it's going to ask, stand back, they want to analyze the rhythm again, because they may need to deliver another shock, because sometimes it takes more than one shock. So we're kind of running out of time, y'all, and I want you to be able to get into church. but I'm welcome, I'm happy to come back again. You know what I mean? If you want to do that and we can kind of go through this a little bit more. There is a difference on this one. These are our old AEDs, y'all. And I'm welcome to stay if anyone wants to come and play with it. These, you'll notice it has a case. When you turn this one on, and I check them monthly, you guys, to make sure everything's functional. They all have green flashing lights that tells you that it's a functional battery. This one's gonna talk and it's gonna talk a little bit louder.
Stay calm. Follow these voice instructions. Make sure 911 is called now. Begin by exposing patient's bare chest and torso. Remove or cut clothing if needed.
That's a shade.
When patient's chest and torso are exposed, remove square foil package from lid of AED. Tear open foil package across dotted line and remove pad.
Doesn't matter which one.
And separate one of the white
Over,
pads
one goes
completely
there,
from loose plastic
pull
liner.
that one off
Begin
the big
peeling
here.
from the tab corner.
So, this one is not a.
Next, separate one of the white pads completely from loose plastic liner. Begin peeling from the tab corner.
This one's not a trainer, so I can't pause it. What has happened, all the new AEDs are one set of pads that can be used for children and adults. There's a switch to change it from adult to child mode. The old ones don't have that. And we have the majority of our AED machines are the old ones. So and the reason all the companies have kind of wasted our time trying to change out pads. You'll notice that the pads have a color-coded cords to it. And when you go to change them, say I've got a kit and I need to do it, you gotta know, if I pull here,
Stay calm.
nothing's gonna
Follow
happen.
these voice
I gotta
instructions.
know how to
Make
unlatch
sure
it,
911 is called now.
and if I go in the
Make
wrong
sure
way,
that
I can't get it in.
in.
I have to,
Make
always
sure
do the
pad
color
connector
code.
is plugged into
Okay.
AED.
So,
Make sure pad connector is plugged into AED.
you'll notice,
And begin by exposing patient's bare chest and torso. Remove
you notice it's me fiddling, we start wasting time. And that's why the changeover has been with machines. So, you'll see, we're gonna gradually, over time, replace out our old ones eventually, once we have, enough money to do that over time.
How much is it? What's the new cost?
New one costs $2,500. Okay, yeah,
Idea of the first responders retirement. And do they?
yes, they have the capability, have the training, and they can go ahead and they can deal with your airway for breathing, and they can go ahead and get you, shocked and defibrillated. Yeah. Other questions? Yes, Ralph?
I'm in a luncheon at, White Center, Lowe's is there and others, no doctors. My wife is not there. You're you're not on call that day, and I fall out. And, so within 10 to 15 seconds, I seem to be, please don't call EMS. I'm embarrassed. Does he call 911 or EMS first?
Okay, they're the same. So calling 911 is the same thing as calling EMS. This is where it's a judgment call. And, sometimes we've had where people have passed out and then people are embarrassed. I've had one gentleman say I was having chest pain in the service and I didn't want to cause a stink and I didn't want to pass out in the service. So I got up and walked outside. And my fear is you go outside and you fall down on the ground and no one would find you in time. Do you know what I mean? So the thing is, should you call, you can let them know, like if they passed out, and they don't, and they respond right away, it's a thing, it's a conversation. Or say, let them come and check you out, because they can still refuse. They can still refuse with EMS. But at least, someone was there, they could hook them up to something, they could check on them, check their vital signs, make sure they're okay. But again, though, it's a choice. But we, at church, I've had things where someone's fallen and broken a hip, we've had the heart presentation, we've had the passed out, we've fallen and hit our head and had a big laceration on the head. Other things in the time that I've been here, someone else with another cardiac presentation. We kind of just, Newton and I, we call and then let them assess and they have a conversation with them. Most everybody does go. but we've had a few times where people chose not to go. You know, that's people. Yeah.
I have a question as a woman. What about a woman's bra?
That's a great question. You know what? We cut them.
You cut them and then you have to.
Yes. We don't have, we just move everything over. If you can imagine trying to slide this underneath a bra strap and getting things, it's about time. And I know that people feel uncomfortable with that. There's this uncomfortableness. But you know, the reality is we're trying to save someone's life and that's how we leave it. I mean, you know, that's part of that.
Okay.
Please, you guys feel free to go to church if you, I don't want to stop you all. You know, but if anybody wants to stay and wants to come and play with it, I'm here. I can come back, however you all want to do it. I'll leave it in your hands. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. We'll probably need a second lesson. I don't know. In this class next week, we'll have a representative from the Children's Home Society. Preaching in the sanctuary this morning is Gil, and her topic is compelled by compassion. After you will stand, we'll have a closing prayer. Help, oh God, when we're at the crossroads of doubt and faith. May your word always shine as a beacon of light to us in our time of uncertainty. Thank you for the people you send to us in times of need and for the comfort they offer. May we in turn be faithful to comfort others. In Jesus' name, amen.
God, I hope I told you.